Welcome to Tibalt's Apprentice, Luck of the Draw. Today's topic is, well, shameful decks. And what do I mean by shameful decks? I guess you could substitute the word shameful with competitive, but shameful decks by my definition would be decks that would make you feel bad if you played them a second time against your friends. It's kind of a generic description. Anyhow, what this comes from is the deck that I put up here last week. It was one that I initially saw on either Merchant or Convert Go Blue. At any rate, it's the Thassa Oracle deck. And the response that I got for one of the places that I put it up was, it's a terrible deck, it should be banned immediately. Well, I can tell you after 14 days of playing Vintage, nothing but Vintage this month, it's not that busted, believe me. A few cards that will stop it instantaneously, in fact. One would be a Hushbringer. Yeah, game over as soon as that happens. Or any sort of hand removal. Anything that lets you go in and surveil on your deck and then look in their hands. Yeah, that's really all it takes to shut that deck down. So while it's a good deck, good in that it wins, it's not infallible. It did get me very quickly to Platinum this month, but about mid-Platinum is the best I've done so far with it. Anyhow, the deck number one that I want to talk about is that one. And the only additions that I made to the deck was throwing in a Reliquary Tower. The Reliquary Tower, because of my old and slow reflexes, lets me keep all the cards that I need to at one time in my hand without throwing anything away. So I don't have to click, 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 click all the way through to get rid of those cards. The other one is the, let's see here, what is it even called? Seraphim Void. Both of those are situational. Both of those inclusions are situational in my case. The ability to scry and be able to put a card that I need to maybe pick off a card a little bit easier, thinning out the deck. I know it doesn't make a big difference, but occasionally with this deck, it does make a difference. What you may be seeing around me here is that deck actually being played. You can see how it works, and you can see me lose with it. Getting back to my definition of what a shameful deck is, again, it's one that makes you feel bad when you're playing with friends, or leaves your friends feeling like they've been gut shot. You know, not literally gut shot the card, but makes them feel like they never really had a chance of winning anyhow upon reflecting on the game. Another deck, other than the Thassa Oracle deck, is my Second Son deck. When one of the Friday Night Magic decks, I believe, was the inspiration for this for me. And this is my version of it. And give me a second while I go through the cards. Of course, the Approach to the Second Son is the key card that you're looking to cast. But how do you get to that? One of the ways that you get to it is with 3 Gleamers of Genius. One way to get there. Another way, of course, would be Opt. Another 3 Opts will get you even closer. Cards like Anticipation also help you cycle through your deck faster. Disallows are things that will let you cast that Second Son that second time when you need it, or even shut down other threats that are on the board. A couple of negates, actually 3 negates and 2 spell swindles also will help from threats from spells. Then you need to worry about what's actually on the board. To deal with that, the flash mechanic on cast out makes a huge difference. That and Sealed Away allow you to deal with threats that hit the board and can't be dealt with any other way. If you need multiple threats dealt with, Fumigate wipes the board nicely. Select for Inspection, another couple of those in there just to allow you to deal with that individual threat as well as the scry. Lets you get just a little bit further into the deck to see what you need. And to get those back, a couple of Torrential Gearhulks. Nice addition to the deck to be able to get those things out and be able to cast them again. Just for fun, there's a single Metallurgic Summoning in there. It allows you to, well, it actually acts as fodder in the game if you get it out early enough, because they'll be distracted by any artifacts you may be putting on the board and may find the need to deal with that and maybe use their spells to get rid of that instead of getting rid of something you need later on. A Disenchant allows you to get rid of their pesky enchantment or artifact creature or something of that nature that's stopping you from winning the game. A couple of Renegade maps, a treasure map, and for the final artifact in here, it's a Life Crafter Bestiary. Now, I can only ever use that green mana if I get treasure tokens, but what I like is that scry at the beginning of your upkeep. This deck is actually rounded out by a Glacial Fortress, 4 Evolving Wilds, the rest of it being Plains and Islands. A great fun deck, but after you've won with it the first or second time, your friends are likely to groan when you pull it out. I've recently found myself in a situation where it was the only 60-card deck that I had, and I feel like I've made myself a target for any future game that I pull out a white deck or pull out an island or a plains. I have a feeling it'll be a big target on my back. But anyhow, that's the second of my more competitive decks. The final deck that I want to talk about here has a little bit of a story attached to it. And we won't get into specifics of where this took place or who exactly was involved, but I will say it was about the time of the forming of our Core 4. If you've watched the channel at all, you know that Brian, Josh, and Enrique and myself form a play group that's been going now for, say, 10 or 11 years now? At least 10 years. Well, this story is the beginning of it, so we'll say about 9 years. We'll go back to 2010 when we'd all just got back into the game. And we'd missed a few sets. We all kept up our collections to varying degrees. But we had just gotten back into it and we're playing, and we had just bought a Arch Enemy deck. New to the game and new to the mechanics, we kind of missed the Eldrazi. So when a young man, I want to say young boy, but you know, everybody's younger than me, so whatever. Anyhow, young man comes over and says, "Hey, I'll sit down and play with you guys. I'll even be Arch Enemy. You guys can team up against me." Okay, fair enough. We're into it. Sure. We sat down. I bring up the fact that we just got into it. We missed sets and stuff because, of course, we were not ready for Emrakul. We just weren't ready for Emrakul. So he had made a name, this young man had made a name for himself playing this type of deck, having a very streamlined, very well-built deck. Which is all fine and good, and I'm all happy to take our lumps. Until he said, "Can you guys hurry up? My ride's waiting for me." What? You invited yourself over here to play with us, to play with our deck, and we're not dying fast enough for you? Really? Well, we went on to suffer a crushing defeat, of course, not being prepared for that, but anyhow, time goes by. So time goes by, and I might be misquoting Vikings, I think it was, where I heard it said, "Fear the fury of a patient man." I'm not usually a patient man. That's the whole Mad Saxon thing. That's whatever. If you watch my games and stuff, you know I'm not a patient player usually. However, with the help of Brian, I was given this next deck, which I'm going to talk about. Anyhow, time passed. The fame of said player grew, or the infamy, as the case may be. So much so that when we arrived there on a Saturday, it was decided that the young man was going to play his Mirkwood deck and was going to play 8 other opponents and be the arch enemy. Wow, 8 other opponents. Spotted him another 10 points for each player, leaving him with a life total of 80, I believe. I bring up the specific life total because, of course, that didn't matter. I believe my first turn was a swamp, followed by a putrid imp. The next turn, I believe, involved a dark ritual, and let's see. Well, basically, we'll just get to turn 3, where I cast my Hegemon, which then brought back the Magister Sphinx, and that 80 life just became 10. The entire table erupted with 7 other opponents all rushing to get their attacks, their shocks, to get any damage on said player. Now, I don't know, maybe I'm the jerk in this story, possibly. I'm not that person anymore. I try not to be that player anymore. But anyhow, that's my little stupid story. I'm surprised you stuck around for it. Let's get to what the deck is. The deck requires reanimate. And once you can reanimate, if you can't reanimate, then you exhume. If you can't exhume, you then shallow grave. What you have done at this point, generally speaking, is buried alive. And it's the suite of creatures that allow you to win the game. On a perfect world, you have the player at -3 on turn 1. Yeah, it could be done. It would take a god draw, though. Anyhow, I mentioned the Hegemon being one of the creatures, Sphinx Sovereign being another of the creatures, Magister Sphinx being the other, and then just to round things out, a few Ulamog Crushers will do the job. Also, if you can't get the things in the graveyard with the buried alive, a few Bog Imps help you put those creatures into the graveyard. A couple of Signed in Blood to make sure that you get the cards that you need, followed by a few Beseech the Queens. All of these have super low casting cost, and the one thing that really makes everything possible, of course, is Dark Rituals. So the rest of this deck, as I have it here, is more situational and was designed because we played another play group that liked infinite squirrels and infinite wolves. So I made some tweaks to deal with those type of things. A Go for the Throat, a few Hem to Turoks, and most importantly, some Bloodseekers were added in there just so when those creatures hit the board, well, it was quite painful. Rounded out with another 20 lands. 20 swamps to be specific. So anyhow, we've got a standard deck, no, vintage deck for the Thassa. The other one would be modern or vintage or Pioneer even, I think. I think it's even legal on Pioneer for the Second Sun deck. And of course, this one being also vintage or, Legacy. even if you want it, I guess. Anyhow, just a few winning decks, I guess. A few shameful decks. A few decks that, well, decks that you wouldn't play continuously with your play group if you like them. But if you do want to get some wins in, and that's all you're looking to do, those are a few decks to check out. Now that I've got all that out of the way, I want to say if you get a chance, tune in this coming Wednesday. I will get a chance, thanks to Wizards, to be able to see the upcoming set, see what those Ikoria cards are and what they can do. I encourage everybody to like, comment, and subscribe. This video is just a little bit out of the ordinary because, well, because everybody's on lockdown at this point, right? So I can assure you that future shows will be better and more entertaining once I get to have some guests on here again. In the meantime, being stuck just watching me, I've tried to make it brief, but I've tried to give you some decks to win with, so when we can get out there and get to the local game stores, we can play and we can have a good time. Well, you can at least have a good time to start with. So at any rate, I want to thank you for watching. Encourage you to click that subscribe button. If you do want to see gameplay and you do want to see more, you can let me know by hitting that bell. You'll get notifications. You'll get notifications that way when new content arrives. And be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.